Reviewing the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is Ben Friedman at the Beniverse Movie Channel, and welcome to my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 here on the Beniverse Movie Channel. Hello, my name is Ben Friedman here on the Beniverse Movie Channel, and today on this channel I am going to be talking about the latest installment within the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, directed by James Gunn and starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, Dave Bautista, Gillian, so many other actors that I'm just so excited to be talking about this film. I saw this film a few days ago, and I've actually been just so excited to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. Let me give a brief description of what Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is about. We follow the Guardians a few years after the events of Avengers Endgame. They are all to a degree torn up by what has happened. Peter Quill is upset about the loss of Gamora and her being basically resurrected and her not knowing who he is. Rocket is going through some PTSD revolving around how he was made. And after an attack happens on the planet of nowhere that leaves the Guardians weakened, they now must go on a quest to discover the past of the character Rocket Racoon. So this film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, largely works as an origin story for the character of Rocket Racoon. And Bradley Cooper is the heart of this film. My God, Bradley Cooper does some amazing vocal performance acting in this film. Him as Rocket Racoon just really brings the emotion. And what so impressed me about what Cooper is able to achieve is this character is able to be everything the script asked of him. It is a very tragic story with Rocket Racoon. If you know his origins in the comic, you know how brutal it is. And James Gunn is not afraid to dive into that brutality. This film is very upsetting, and I mean to the utmost degree. Without spoiling much, and I don't think this is a spoiler based on what other things Rocket Racoon has said in the series already, we know that Rocket was made in a lab and basically reassembled and assembled over and over again. And that's really explored in this movie, and you see the cruelty of the person who does it to him, the High Evolutionary, played incredibly by Chiwetel Ejiofor, who previously co-starred in the Peacemaker show, which was directed by James Gunn. He, as the High Evolutionary, is just absolutely scary. There is no rhyme, there's no reason to his brutality, his meanness, and it's so convincingly scary. This is one of the best Marvel villains in all senses of the word, because this film could become exploitive, especially with some of the animal cruelty in this film, which I should just warn, if you are prone to just hating the idea of seeing animals hurt on screen, this movie is very torturous in a few scenes. There are some really upsetting imagery in this film. It is, for often of its 2.5-hour runtime, very unsettling to see what the High Evolutionary is doing within this film, but yet it's so effective. This relationship that Rocket Racoon has with his friends that are also animals turned kind of cyborgs, specifically this otter named Leela, who is voiced by Linda Cardellini, they are all just so heart-wrenchingly just tragic, and it really just emphasizes how evil High Evolutionary is. But focusing away from Bradley Cooper's Rocket Racoon, this whole ensemble cast is really special. I think with each film, these actors get better and better. I don't think Chris Pratt has been better in a Guardians of the Galaxy film than he is in this installment as Star-Lord. I found him to be truly special. Dave Bautista as Drax the Destroyer, one of my biggest issues that I had with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is they kind of turned Drax the Destroyer into the comedic delivery guy. All he did was quip, and he did none of the destroying. In this film, Drax the Destroyer gets his moments, he gets his fight scenes, and yet he's also still incredibly funny. Gillian is kind of the unsung hero of the Guardians films. I thought she was absolutely fantastic as Nebula. This whole cast is just really good from top to bottom. But the guy I have to praise the most in my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is its director and writer, James Gunn. James Gunn is such a great director for these type of superhero movies. This is a film about people growing up. This is a film about people who have made many mistakes in their life and have now come to the point of helping people. And they are dealing with some of those regrets, that running away from fears. If you do not remember, there was a lot of controversy surrounding James Gunn's firing and rehiring by the Marvel Cinematic Studios in 2018 due to some previous tweets. This is James Gunn to a degree. It's a very meta text in the fact that it feels like he is directly addressing some of those feelings that he has on that. And to some degree working through that and also offering an apology. This isn't the case of a director just screaming about him being canceled and that is all it. This is the case of a director understanding what has happened and also kind of just saying like, this is who I was and this is who I am. This movie is fantastic. This was kind of what I wanted from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. As someone who loves the first Guardians film, isn't the biggest fan of the second one, this one, they came back, they came to play, and it works in so many great levels. And before I jump away from James Gunn, I just want to talk about how much he has grown as a director in this series. The action in this film is absolutely incredible. There's one action set piece towards the third act of the film involving basically a hallway set to 1980s hip hop that is absolutely electrifying. It's a good 3 to 4 minute sequence and the direction in it is so flawless. There are so many scenes like this in this movie where it's just like you can feel the mastercraft work that James Gunn is able to employ, whether it's not just the action sequences, whether it's just the framing of characters. Some of the shots in this film are absolutely terrifyingly beautiful. In some sequences involving the High Evolutionary, James Gunn really does take inspiration from David Cronenberg, specifically films like The Fly. There's these pods in the film that feel almost directly pulled from The Fly. There's so much of that in this film. There is a real body horror element to this film. It is almost as if James Gunn is reminding you he directed the film Slither. There is a hint of meanness in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I really liked. This is, again, James Gunn, who has, in the very beginning of his career, was a very cynical filmmaker, making films like Slither and making films like Super. You see some of that nastiness come out with it, but it's also the story, again, of moving away from that nastiness and not letting that nastiness consume you. Thus, the nastiness is paired so well opposite the just enthusiasm of the Guardians and the joy they take and the what they do to sacrifice in this film. And that is ultimately what Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is about. I found it an absolutely electrifying ride from start to end. And I also am really just kind of, by the end of the 32nd installment of the MCU, I was like, okay, this is the end for me. This really is the end for me. By the time Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 ends, I'm like, I'm good on the MCU. This feels like such a perfect capstone for me. Like, this feels like the moment where by the end of this film and the sequences that happen in this film, I'm just like, my emotional investment is with this film and this film alone. And if this was the conclusion, I'd be so happy. Now, the issue is I know Marvel has many more plans for the MCU as a whole, and we're going to get a 33rd film and a 34th film and a 35th film, etc., etc. But when watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, all I could think of is this is the conclusion of this universe, and if this is where we were to leave off on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what a beautiful note it would be. And I'm glad that James Gunn got his final swan song before switching over to DC, because I think this film is absolutely incredible, and I also think it spells doom for the MCU, because the reality of this situation is not that many directors who are directing MCU installments are as talented as James Gunn are. There are going to be a lot of directors who have to prove themselves. They are relying on more B-list, C-list characters you know, when Fantastic Four and X-Men come around, maybe they'll have a little bit more of the A-list superheroes. But right now, it just feels like the investment is going down. And by the end of this Guardians of the Galaxy film, I am left wondering how much audiences are going to care about the MCU without basically James Gunn. I don't think it is a spoiler to say that this film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, has been pitched to a degree as the final installment of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, that's not to say characters do or do not die in this film. I will not spoil any of this, but it is to say that there is a finality to this film. It's just that that finality also kind of felt bigger and kind of felt like a finality for the MCU as a whole. And now the MCU has to get out of this because, to be honest, they just lost one of their, if not best directors, to their competitor. And now they have to just make do with the fact that whatever happens, they just don't have James Gunn as an ally in Marvel Studios. And that's a big loss for them. This film does nothing to reassure me about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This wasn't a film that I saw and was like, well, all answers are fixed. We're good. We're sailing from here. It's smooth waters, just like it was. Felt like pre-Infinity War for a while. This feels like a one-off. It feels like something we won't get. James Gunn is able to take big risks that it just feels like other directors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe would not be able to take. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 does not go out of its way to fix the larger issues with Marvel right now, but as what this film is, which is a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, as the conclusion to a trilogy, I think this film is as perfect as it can go. The only critiques that I will give of this film, it is very dour. It is very sad. It is very distressing. It is not an easy film to rewatch. I find myself struggling to put myself in certain of those scenes again, where I'm just sitting there and I'm like, even like that I want to go back and see this film in theaters. This is not something I could watch every day like you were able to do with an Endgame. There is just a lack of just like joy you have in this film. Not to say that this film isn't a ton of fun. It is just when the sad moments hit in this film, they hit strong and it's not in a necessarily rewatchable way. Scenes of this film feel torturous. One last thing I'll give before I sign off, and let me just say I am doing a spoiler review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which will post tomorrow, so I'll go into more spoilers on this film. James Gunn is the master of needle drops. There are 3 to 4 needle drops in this film that are incredible. One of them I already mentioned was a hip-hop tune. One of them's at the very end with a more modern song than the Guardians films are used to, and I thought that was used to just incredible effect. There's a needle drop right at the beginning of the film to really establish the mood of the film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, well worth your time. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars here on the Beneverse. Anyway, all, thank you for watching this review. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beneverse. Thank you all for watching. Take care and bye-bye.